Slenderman, what would the internet do without you? Presumably sleep a little better at night, but we all know who Slenderman is, the tall, faceless creature who skulks the woods at night looking for people to mysteriously abduct. Slenderman originated as somewhat of an internet campfire story via Something Awful Forms user Eric Knudsen, also known as Victor Surge. In 2009, on a thread dedicated to making photoshopped paranormal images, Knudsen submitted the first glimpses of Slenderman into the world, along with some cleverly written, if very brief, anecdotes on the creature, written in character. This tall, spindly fellow is depicted as both of those previous qualities, along with another prominent feature that's difficult to miss: his distinct lack of face. Pop a classy black suit and tie on him after that, and you have one of the most influential and iconic boogeymen of the past decade. And it's not difficult to see why. While Slenderman on his own can seem a bit old hat nowadays, and maybe even tame compared to other internet oddities, what makes Slenderman so terrifying is the canvas-like quality of his character. Beyond reproach, beyond understanding, totally ambiguous and yet inexplicable, dangerous, a perfect roadmap to your specific fears. He's a stand-in for just about, well, anything. But what rocketed Slenderman from the fame of form dwellers to the consciousness of the larger public? Well, obviously a lot of factors contributed to that, but there is definitely a launchpad to credit for all of this, and that's what I wanted to talk to you all about today. Video content centered around Slenderman, created by the internet, for the internet, and taking it by storm in the process. Quite literally, in many cases. Before we proceed any further, though, we have to address the elephant in the room. I know it's awkward, might seem a bit obligatory, but it's better to mention it now and get it out of the way than stall and risk seeming insensitive to the issue. On May 31st, 2014, two 12-year-old girls in Wisconsin held down and stabbed their fellow classmate 19 times in what they alleged was an attempt to become proxies for Slenderman. The girl miraculously survived the attack, and both girls were charged as adults and put on trial for the crime. Obviously, there are a lot of deeply sensitive factors that go both into the victim's side of the story as well as regarding the states of the girls in question. So I'm not going to try to go too into detail about it all because I don't feel it in my place to do so. I'll simply say that it's obvious to me that these girls definitely showed an inability to distinguish between fiction and reality and should not have been left alone with content like this at their ages regardless, in my opinion. Although I maintain that Slenderman media is enjoyable and meaningful on its own, I do understand that a lot of goodwill one may be willing to give the character would be squandered under the circumstances of this horrible crime, and if the incident were to turn you off to the whole thing, that would be more than understandable. I'm not going to try to make excuses for these girls. I think they deserve to go to prison for what they've done. But I'll also enjoy the media itself, knowing I'm not susceptible to doing something as horrifying as these children did. I'm only here to enjoy fictional media for what it is, fiction. With that being said, early on into the creation of the character, Slenderman soon went viral, responsible for plethoras of fan art, cosplay, and other horror stories written from the perspectives of more victims of the monster. Quickly growing out of Knudsen's hands entirely, Slenderman became the star of an ever-growing mythos being penned by the internet collectively. This led very quickly to the creation of the very first video series based on the character, Marble Hornets. Marble Hornets is a YouTube web series that first began on June 20th, 2009, briefly following a forum post by creator Troy Wagner on, you guessed it, Something Awful. Wagner and his friend Joseph Delage began working on the plot for the series soon after reading the initial posts by Knudsen, being inspired by the mythos and proposed ease of creating for YouTube. The story of Marble Hornets follows Jay Merrick, a college-age guy looking to find out what happened during the filming of Marble Hornets, a scrapped student film being directed by his former friend Alex Crayley. 3 years prior, Alex abruptly canceled production on the film after only 2 months of production time, citing issues with work conditions. Before cutting contact with Jay entirely, Alex handed over the raw footage tapes under request, but told Jay to never talk to him about them again. What comes next should come as very little surprise. Through watching and documenting his experiences with the tapes, Jay soon discovers the presence of an unsettling, looming, faceless figure that appears in multiple tapes, known as the Operator, which is what Troy and Joseph decided to dub Slenderman for their particular depiction of the character. The Operator continually stalks Alex, regardless of time or place, and this leads to Alex undergoing a drastic decline of both mental and physical health, and seemingly causes video equipment to have severe visual and audio distortion issues as well. The more Jay looks into these tapes, the more he begins to see his situation is becoming similar to Alex's, and he's faced with the continuing mystery of Alex's whereabouts, the presence of the Operator, and the cryptic messages and warnings from a separate user known as To The Ark, who seems to be threatening him from investigating further. To date, there are 92 videos on the main channel, with 39 accompanying videos on the To The Ark channel. As of June 2019, the main channel has over 100 million views. The final entry, entry number 87, was posted onto YouTube on June 20th, 2014, exactly 5 years after the introduction video. Marble Hornets quickly drew a large audience upon release, drawing comparisons to Lonely Girl 15 almost immediately. Early during the production of the first season, it even received praise from the late Roger Ebert, who called the series, quote, remarkably well done. Of Ebert's praise, Joseph remarked, "We were in total shock and awe. We couldn't really accept that a guy who's that hard to impress was impressed with what we were doing." To this day, Marble Hornets is arguably the most popular of the video-centric Slenderman projects online, still retaining a massive following long after its initial ending, being a first of its kind both for YouTube content and as a trendsetter for how to make Slenderman videos. And it should come as no surprise that Marble Hornets ushered in a trend as a result. Soon enough, everyone and their grandmother was attempting to corner their own portion of the Slenderman market, and while many tried and failed to get any momentum going, a few strong contenders stood out from the pack, and came out of the game with more than a few fans to show for their troubles. First up on our list to mention is Everyman Hybrid.
Are you serious? Come on, just... For real? All right then. Oh, really? We're playing the teleporting game now? Is that what we're doing? Wait a minute. Time on the... Oh, and we're moving through time. You know, I was wondering when you were going to do that again. Well, I had some nuggets already saved for you from the other day. I was about to go get... Asshole. I got your nuggets.
Everyman Hybrid was a YouTube series initially inspired heavily by Marble Hornets, but over time begins to take its own unique direction. Out of the major Slenderman-based web series online that have gained relative traction, EMH is the heaviest in its use of ARG elements. An ARG, or alternate reality game, is a concept I've brought up on this channel before, in my childhood trauma video to be specific. But for those of you who need a refresher, an alternate reality game is an interactive networked narrative that uses the real world as a platform, employing transmedia storytelling across videos, social media posts, geocaches, etc., to deliver a story in a way that feels immersive to its players, mostly by prompting players to directly interact with and influence the direction of the story.
You know, you're pretty clever, man. Finding your way out here, finding the stash I left for you. Very resourceful. I like that. Very clever.
I don't want any trouble, man.
Don't worry. I'm not here to hurt you, Green. I'm here to talk. Here's what I want to talk about.
Players interact with the game and its characters directly, solving plot-based challenges and puzzles, and collaborating with fellow fans to solve mysteries, piece information together, and coordinate real-life and online activities. Though previously Marble Hornets had employed light ARG elements, such as with coded messages in To the Arc videos and some degree of character interaction with in-character tweets from Jay, these elements were mostly kept to a minimum in favor of a more direct approach. EMH, on the other hand, takes the cake, runs with it, and eats it too. Throughout the series, which ran from March 21st of 2010 all the way to January 1st of 2019, interactive games, Twitter interactions, crossover events with other Slenderman series, live streams, meetings with fans, and GPS-coordinated packages of story information were all regular additions to the world of EMH's story. While this expansive story nature combined with its generally ambiguous and heavy lore and world-building make EMH a bit of a beginner-unfriendly behemoth to properly approach, this method of storytelling is certainly not without its merits.
Holy shit!
Emmett, are you okay?
There's nothing in there, but listen, just to be
Earth
safe,
and
let's
water.
definitely get some stuff in front of it, like maybe close the closet. The door's open! Shit! Alright, well, I should hold it at least for a very short while.
For those dedicated enough to wade through the seas of information to properly piece everything together, what you'll find is an intensely engaging and wholly real-feeling series, which really escalates suspension of disbelief to an entirely different level. With plenty of scares, insanely clever video editing, tight, funny, and impressively well-acted retro-scripting.
What the f***?
I know, I was gonna warn you about that.
Original monsters, and so much more. But enough gushing from me. But what's EMH actually about when it comes down to it? EMH was originally created as a health and fitness video vlog by friends Vincent, Evan, and Jeffrey. Later appearances are also made by Jeff's brother Alex and a girl named Stephanie, affectionately referred to by fans as Damsel.
We figured you'd be happy.
No, I'd be f***ing stoked if they weren't releasing me today.
Originally intended to be an innocuous exercise series with a side dish of background Slenderman pranks performed by a friend,
Pretty much anything could affect what you dream about. Like just last week I had midterms, and I was stressing out so much that I had dreams that I was running through the woods in my old elementary school, and it felt like something was following me.
the show takes a dire twist when shortly into production, the real Slenderman appears in Evan's house, kicking off a long twisting road of mysteries concerning the pasts of our principal cast, an unknown puppeteer named Habit, Slenderman, another horror internet figure known as the Rake, a doctor named James Corenthal, and the Fairmount Children's Home, and the viewers, in which they are all involved in ways they don't quite understand.
Sent you to look through the eyes. You know he thinks those are eyes.
Though for new viewers, I'd recommend navigating the story with either the help of the wiki timeline or the explained series by Nick Nocturne of Nightmind. I would still highly recommend the experience of EMH to anyone who finds the challenge worth taking on, even if the story is no longer ongoing. Just don't only follow the YouTube channel in chronological order, expecting to get the whole story that way. EMH is very much cross-media, intensely so, in fact, and you're not going to get all of the story material unless you're willing to follow instructions to make sure you don't miss anything.
One of the plot points in this series was revealed in a Minecraft map.
Of course, the series isn't really for everyone, and that's not just because of its confusing nature. Habit as a villain is really fun to me personally, but he's the type of villain who will inevitably rub some people the wrong way, and if you can't enjoy his brand of sardonic, edgy evil, he's around for so much of the late-game content that it will be nearly impossible to get through if you can't find some level of enjoyment in seeing him on screen.
Hey, Doc. Missed you at the diner. But you sure as hell didn't miss me. Well done. I gotta say, you have been a lot of fun.
There's also the matter of the subject matter, because it can get dark.
Steph, that thing you were talking about. I saw he's pretty. You're right, you're sorry. What the hell does he want? I think he's following me. Holy shit. Steph, please, wake up. Wake up.
I know we're talking about a Slenderman series here, so dark is kind of the name of the game, but trust me when I say when it comes to explicit content, EMH might just be the most X-rated of the bunch. Obviously it doesn't have nudity or sex in it, this is YouTube after all, but there are plenty of subjects that get broached, both violent and not so violent, that are equally gruesome and uncomfortable, and with that being said, I would absolutely not recommend EMH to those of you who are squeamish or easily upset by things of this nature.
I don't understand how you didn't see death as the only solution, or the only outcome.
It's my personal favorite Slender series of all time, bar none, but if you can't handle it, don't worry. You're not the only one out there. Crucially though, what's most important to understand about EMH, if nothing else, is how it shaped the scope and wider approach to Slender series going forward, as its penchant for building a tangible world and crossing over with other series is what gave birth to the Slenderman scene we've known ever since, which also gives us a glimpse into the third biggest Slender series out there, Tribe 12. Tribe 12 is a Slenderman-based ARG and video series created by Adam Rosner, who, being a citizen of the state of Florida, probably has the most real-life experience with horrors beyond our earthly understanding. In all seriousness, though, Tribe 12 centers around the misadventures of Noah Maxwell, a college-age resident of a nice Floridian community who is ruthlessly stalked by, guess who? In addition, Noah is toyed with by the equally sadistic proxy of the beast known as the Observer, who belongs to a legion of other Slender servants known as the Collective, who are looking to draft Noah into their ranks and aren't keen on taking no for an answer. Tribe 12 originally takes inspiration from Marble Hornets, beginning to serve as little more than an insular tribute to that series to be shared among friends. Of course, the project grew much larger than its initial scale called for, and what resulted was the ongoing behemoth we see today. It's most well known among its peers for its heavy use of very impressive visual effects, particularly with Slenderman's iconic tentacle-like tendrils. The series has also officially crossed over more than once with Everyman Hybrid, and another series called Dark Harvest 00, meaning that steadily between these crossovers and the others that EMH had on its own, the world of the Slender series was growing wider and wider with each new puzzle piece contributed by creator after creator. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here, let's focus on TT. Despite being a pretty popular series, TT also gets some occasional flack for having a bar of entry. Not due to confusing puzzles, not due to annoying fans, not even due to length, but because of poor acting in the beginning of the series. Yeah, it's not really a secret that early Tribe 12's acting is less than Oscar-worthy.
Man, what's with that cough?
It's nothing.
I've even had friends tell me before that they dropped off of the series early on because they couldn't get past the poor acting quality. I know this is a repetitive defense for a lot of things, and you've probably heard it a million times before, but trust me when I say this, it gets better. Way better. Adam Rosner's portrayal of Noah, while stilted at times, more so in the early series than later on, is increasingly dead on as time goes along, and he's genuinely become one of my favorite Slender series protagonists as a result. He's dry, quick-witted, and overall just tired of all this supernatural nonsense.
Been a hot minute since I checked the mail. Oh. No mail today.
His almost cynical and comedic resignation to all of the suffering he's being put through adds a slightly morbidly humorous edge to the series, which makes for a great time, especially when it comes to the dialogue.
Look at this. What is this? This is f***ing Christmas borders you put on this paper? I mean, he's just doing this to piss me off. He knows I'm Jewish.
Can you trust me that I'm not gonna hurt you?
No.
Okay, that's probably a good idea.
And you'll find it's a welcoming change of pace from other series, which can sometimes be a bit emotionally draining. Be warned, though, that Tribe 12 can be nearly just as dark as EMH is. Maybe not quite up there, but given that they've officially crossed over with each other, you can safely assume they're in the same league. Most importantly of all, I should mention TT has a generous amount of genuinely creepy content, which is a no-brainer for a horror series, but more specifically I should mention there's not exactly a lack of jump scares. And don't worry, they're not the chief source of horror. The horror is handled very well, but if jump scares really lock you up or make you upset, probably avoid this one. Definitely watch some of the Collective videos if you're aspiring to work in film, though. They're incredibly well put together, and Death Trap Exodus is a personal favorite of mine. We don't have time to go through all of the various series out there, obviously, but I'd also like to give notable shoutouts to M.L. Anderson Zero, which is very well made and has crossed over with Everyman Hybrid on more than one occasion, once very prominently. Whispered Faith, Dark Harvest 00, TJA Projects, Keratin Garden, Stan Frederick, and more. Seriously, there's so much of this stuff out there that you are in no shortage of content to rummage through.
Get out! I don't want you here anymore! It's too painful!
What stands out to me about all of these projects emerging, taking inspiration from each other, building upon each other's ideas, and even at times collaborating directly with each other, is that Slenderman at this point hardly feels like he's just one person's character. Sure, Knudsen owns the rights and graciously allows some degree of dubious copyright allowance about it, depending, but Slenderman himself has been co-opted to such an incredible degree that even most of his abilities and aesthetic qualities have been lifted directly from some of these very web series. Media scholar and folklorist Andrew Peck once credited the success of Slenderman as a character to its highly collaborative nature. Because Slenderman is this unknowable being with motives beyond our knowledge or understanding, artists can adapt him easily into the typical visual framework he exists in while adjusting him to fit the fears, themes, and situations of any type of story they want to tell. If you look at a lot of Slenderverse series, you'll notice that despite a lot of their formulaic and aesthetic similarities, most of them have at least some unique quality up their sleeve that sets them apart from the pack. And there's no exception to this in their stories. Marble Hornets focused on the destruction of a friend group, rattled with paranoia and suffering. Everyman Hybrid focused on the futility of life and how the world can sometimes feel like it's oppressively weighing down on you.
Oh, f***ing peachy! Don't I? Say yes I do!
Yeah, you do.
Never allowing you a chance for victory, and Tribe 12 focuses on the ongoing struggle against the inevitable, the overwhelming knowledge that one day something will happen that you can't stop, whether it be something as simple as your mortality running its course, or your assimilation into a group of eldritch murder elves by a creepy, beady-eyed future version of yourself who is also a magical time-traveling god demon. You know, Florida stuff. The point is, each story has something that makes it unique, and in this sense, what can start off as a feeling of, oh god, everybody's making a Slenderman thing, can quickly evolve into a realization about the very nature of Slenderverse content. The fact that Slenderman himself is a canvas with which to draw out your deepest fears and communicate them understandably and effectively to an audience who is already familiar with the name of the game, so to speak. Slenderman on his own is, honestly, creepy at best. I mean, look at him. He's just a big old tall guy with no face.
Get a face, man! While you're at it, get a job! You're wearing a suit, and all you do is stand in the woods all day looking like a sex pervert. You louse, you pubic wart on the taint of society. When are you gonna contribute, huh? Tentacles don't pay for grandma's surgery. Static don't put mashed potatoes on the table. You hear me? You suck. Oh, I'm Slenderman. I have tentacles. What do you even need those for? To pick things up? You can do those with hands. You can pick things up with the hands. Those hands. Idiot. Moron. What a dumbass.
But when taken as a stand-in for the type of fear you wish to convey in a story, fear of the unknown, fear of predators, fear of a disease or toxicity, fear of isolation, fear of being watched, literally anything now has a vehicle with which to blankly hunt you down with little understandable rhyme or reason. And that's pretty scary. Instead of privileging Knudsen's posts with full canonical authority, this sort of campfire approach lends a sense of collective and communal ownership over the character, rather than a solely individual one. The character's success rides on the personal artistry and storytelling ability of an artist, and that sense of community, in combination with a collective willingness to suspend one's own disbelief and get involved in the process of advancing these stories with our own degrees of interaction, just further cements the feeling that Slenderverse media is an inherently collaborative artistic process, and a damn fun one at that. Though, in a broad sense, Slenderman taps into our fears of the unknown, especially in an age of information at our fingertips where we're unaccustomed to being ignorant to something. Fundamentally, what makes Slenderman the spookster that he is the sense of malleability that writing something involving him provides. He's the perfect springboard, a muse with which to kickstart your creative freak show. And he doesn't even really have to be the star of it either. He could fall to the background, watching from the shadows, while more active and diabolical creatures of your own creation settle to the forefront of your story's conflict. Or you could focus more primarily on the creature, make him the main focus. Whatever it is you decide to do, there are no guardrails. There's no specific path. You can do whatever you want with Slenderman. And that sense of freedom is what makes Slenderverse content so refreshing when it's done well. And of course, all this hype, all of this recognition, surely Slenderman would make his way into the hearts of the Hollywood producer as well, right? Perhaps we can see a unique artistic vision poured lovingly onto the big budget screen for the world to see our accomplishment. Oh, no, wait, it sucks. It really, really sucks. Like, it sucks super bad. Yep, development of a Slenderman movie was reported as early as May of 2016, with filming taking place in Massachusetts later that next year. It was distributed by Sony Pictures and released nationwide on August 10th, 2018, making around $51 million at the box office on a $10 to $28 million budget. Reviews were generally negative, with critics particularly railing inconsistent tone, character, and story, and generally settling on the consensus that it was just boring, derivative, forgettable. Of course, the film's publicity was not helped by the visible backlash to its release from people who only knew of the character from the aforementioned stabbing incident, which, while I don't necessarily think that should prevent a movie about the character from being made, it is completely understandable to have that as a reaction. And wouldn't you know, Eric Knudsen himself had a degree of involvement with this film and its portrayal of his iconic character. And this is what we got out of that? To be honest, maybe it's better that Knudsen didn't hanker down on copyright with the character, because if this is all we were getting from Slenderman, we'd just be adding him to the ever-growing list of generic movie monsters with entirely wasted potential. I'm looking at you, the Bye-Bye Man. The Slenderverse creators of YouTube fame brought more than enough life to the character in their own unique and terrifying ways, and all of them are leagues better than this uninspired garbage. Seriously, don't even give them money to laugh at this movie. Just stay away from it. Speaking of those creators, I wonder what they thought of this movie.
It was the most boring, cookie cutter, predictable movie that I've probably ever seen, and it's all my fault.
You could have at least tried to make the characters speak like human beings.
It was a mess. That's one word I'd use to describe it. Another one would be ashamed.
I think the sex scene was the best, though, for sure.
I got an astonishingly awful film. Slenderman had no rules. He was not at all scary.
What did I think of the movie?
Yeah.
It was a bad movie. I'm not, angry because I'm involved in the Slenderman thing. If I wasn't involved in the Slenderman thing, still would be a bad movie.
Man, Slenderman was the best comedy of the summer! I loved it! Actually, in reality, it was mediocre like I thought.
I don't know, it kind of reminded me of an M. Night Shyamalan movie in the way that you're like, oh, that could have been a good movie, but it wasn't.
I didn't care. It was so low stakes, I didn't care.
That's fair.
Awful.
That's fair.
Awful. 0 stars out of 400.
The special effects were terrible. The acting was the worst. There were some cool moments, but you can tell it was they probably had one writer who was yeah, this is who knows his shit,
right.
And then 100 writers who were just dumb as.
And then also the CG was really bad too. Just don't do CG if it's gonna.
Yeah, I agree. You're out.
There was no musical number.
Really poor writing. The first 20 minutes were brutal. It felt like a lot was cut out and a lot of it didn't make sense, especially towards the end.
Oof. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty bad reaction. In a way, though, despite the overall shoddiness of the Hollywood film, it's an interesting measuring stick of how far the character has come. From a post on a forum to an internet phenomena to the big screen, that's a pretty big journey, almost like a culmination of all the word-of-mouth excitement and desperate story scrawlings that had coagulated up to that point. And of course, it's disappointing that the resulting film wasn't really any good, sure, but the very principle of it, the idea that Slenderman got a movie, it was like validation, a message to all Slender creatives out there that their effort was not unseen, that their ideas were recognized, that the character that this blooming community helped to collectively give birth to had some strength to stand on his own. And that's got to be super humbling and definitely a little weird. It's like you're the unsung heroes of horror that the world will never know. But Of course, if that meant being associated with Slenderman 2018, maybe it's better that they don't. The point is, the Slenderverse gave and continues to give young and aspiring creatives the horrific platform they need to express their darkest and most thought-provoking art in truly unique and interesting ways. It's given us a wealth of cool stories, interesting visuals, excellent acting, and so much more. It's given us humor, horror, investment, anger, sadness, but most importantly, it's given us, the audience, the creatives, anyone who's willing to step into the world of the strange, a place to express ourselves, to build a community, and to have fun. The Slenderverse perhaps isn't the largest fandom I've ever been a part of, even if it does have a fairly decent size, but it is one of the most enduringly passionate. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because as much as we all enjoy Slenderman media, a lot of us are also creating it. Day by day, video by video, log by log, document by document. Somebody out there right now could be writing the next hot Slenderman story, and if they give their all, I wouldn't mind checking that out. Unless by hot you mean like sexy, because I'm not interested in that sort of thing. I just meant like good, really good, like hot off the I'm gonna stop talking now. Slenderman may be a weird, creepy tall guy who stands in the woods, kidnaps children, and has no face, but where he lacks a face, he has a wonderful open space for a canvas. Just decide what you want to jot down and let the path that stretches ahead guide you. And of course, you don't even have to use Slenderman as your guide. There are plenty of web series out there that have taken inspiration from Slenderverse-esque series and elaborated uniquely on those concepts without even involving the tall man at all. And there are plenty of those coming out all the time, too. Seriously, the web series in ARG storytelling form is ripe for creative exploration, and I am really excited about the rise of this format in recent years. Stuff like Daisy Brown, Hi, I'm Mary Mary, post-content, all of that kind of stuff. It's really cool, and I don't think that sort of media could exist, at least not in the same exact way as it does now, without the influence of the Slenderverse to guide it. But you'll have to excuse me now. I've just about run out of time for today, and I gotta bring $20 to this guy I know. He's kind of a jerk. Anyway, feel free to like the video, leave a comment, share it around, or subscribe for future content if you feel so inclined. I've got a Patreon where you can get access to my Discord server for just $1, and I've also got some social media that you can harass me on if you want. With that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm NezumiVA, have yourself a pleasant week, and... God, you hear that noise? What is that? Oh no. Oh no.
Oh no!